So Mr. Owie comes upon some money, and don't know how, but he builds this house. It's out on Aurora Road, not now, but it's on the north side, about where there's a bar out there called Fishy's on Aurora Road. Fishy's? There's somebody that knows, shaking his head. So anyway, there's a house behind there, and I was told this is just a cracker house, but it had he had brought some carpenter from Japan over to make these architectural changes to give it a Japanese, style look to it. So like I said, I had no idea how Mr. Owie does all this. And so that's where they live. So he's out of the Highland house and he's on Aurora Road now. He's got a farm. He's farming it. He's got probably about 20 acres, I think 10 acres on either side. I think the next slide is. Mr. Owie also hires a number of black people, gentlemen, I think their whole family was there, to work in the farm. This is a bean patch, and we speculate that they may have lived in that house right there. But over the years, I think he had 5 different sets of people that came in that were citizens that were local guys. Okay, that's about Owie. Here comes the Ozakis now. The Ozakis left Japan about 1905, went to, by boat to Hawaii, stayed there for a brief period of time, went to California, worked in beet farms there for a couple of years. One of them went back at that time, Fuji. This is Fuji, and Kusutaro. It was Fuji Kusu and Kusutaro. I'm going to call them Fuji and Kusu, because if I keep Kusuing on both of them, you're going to finally be confused, because I will be. So this is Charlie's dad. There's no photos of Kusutaro. He was described as handsome, muscular, quick-tempered, and really strong, and allergic to wasps. Fuji here was much more milder than Kusu, and stayed on the farm almost exclusively. But we're still talking California, and they're still doing that over there. Kusu goes back. He has an arranged marriage with Yoni, and they move back to California. And there's a daughter born right there. Her name is Hisako. They soon move. They buy land sight unseen, and not a good business move here. Charlie has told me this, and I'm not going to say this because I wouldn't know, but they were not very educated people. The 2 brothers. The brothers are not very educated, but they get by through hard work. So they moved to Orange Park because they've got the property there, and it's just like muck. And they meet a group of Japanese there. This was Sakai's second place that he was going to have a colony, was in Orange Park, and along the railroad tracks again. And so they set up a little bit, they try to build a place and stuff like that, but it just is not working out well at all. Well, who appears? What do you think? Mr. Owie. And he invites them to come down to Eau Gallie. And so they take him up on it. And so Hisako, Fuji, Kusu, and Yoni now move down to Eau Gallie.
What year are we now?
We are in about 1912. 1912, somewhere in there. So Fuji goes back and gets a wife, all right? And she comes back with him, and it is Kiku, who you see right there. Around 1916, Kusu and Yoni have a child, and his name is Bill, all right? Is Bill. Yeah, it's Bill.
Why wouldn't it
Yeah,
be?
well, his real name was Kenzo. They all had English first names, and they had Japanese middle names. And Dr. Creel named almost all of them. Although Bill was not delivered by Dr. Creel, he was delivered by a midwife, as were the first 3 Ozaki boys. The other Ozaki, remember, they're both Ozaki, so, but I have to call them Fujis and Kusus. So this would be Kusu, the muscular guy, right? The guy that can speak a little bit of English. He can speak a little bit of English because he's got to sell vegetables somehow. Fuji speaks no English. So he stays on the farm. So anyway, this is Kiku, arranged marriage, Yoni's sister, no less. And they're all out on the farm now in Eau Gallie. Well, they start having children. Just some farm pictures here. You know, we own a Cleveland who has helped me so much on this. We try to decide who and where, or you know, where are they and who are they? And we haven't really been able to figure out a lot of them. So we just put what we saw on the pictures to begin with. This is out there somewhere, and they're planting a tree. They had a grove of oranges and grapefruit. The Ozakis had one, and when we get to this one slide, I'll show you where the grove was, and when they finally did sell the property, they sold the grove to one guy and the rest of the land to somebody else. All right, so there's a guy planting a tree, so we know they did it. That's a field of celery. I was told something just yesterday. I was talking to the guy at the Murakami thing, because I always have these questions like, why did Oe leave Yamato? You know, there's no record why he left. But he said, well, there was a malaria breakout right about the time that he left in 1906. And in my own theories is that, well, Sakai is running the other place, you know, so I think Oe and him may have had some kind of, you know, difference of opinion, and he decided to set out on his own. And the third is, he may have left to go marry Toyo. I mean, there's a number of different reasons that he could have left, but I don't know which one is the exact right one. But anyway, here's a Japanese guy out on the farm, farming away. They worked sun up, sundown every day. If the moon was full, they were out there again. Okay, now we do have a better idea who this is because there are children involved, and but we just don't know who it is. I'm guessing Bill, and this would be Fred, and that's Fuji. I could be totally wrong on all three. Don't know. They didn't leave us any things on there. All right, we do know this one. The boys, the Ozakis end up, Fuji and Kiku end up with 5 boys. And on the birth of the 5th boy, it goes, you know, Fred, Frank, Henry, Charlie, and John. And like I say, they all have Japanese middle names. Their last name's Ozaki. At the end, well, I should start with Yoni first, because what happened to her happened early on, before Kiku. But we'll come back to her, all right? But after she gave birth to Bill, Yoni, remember, this life out there was just absolutely, you know, isolated. You didn't see anybody that wasn't your family. And she commits suicide by drinking a glass of lye, or a bottle of lye, or whatever.
This is Yoni.
This is Yoni. Kiku's, not Kiku's, Kusu's wife.
Right.
Kiku's the wife
No
of...
photos.
No photos of either one of those. No photos of her. She commits suicide, and she's buried out at the Eau Gallie Cemetery. But at the end of the birthing of all these 5 boys over here on the other side with Fuji, Kiku suffers from postpartum depression on the last one after the birth of John, and she is hospitalized in the Chattahoochee Mental Hospital for the rest of her life. She never comes back. So she leaves about 1929 and dies in 1980 up there. She's buried out there right next to Yoni. So all the boys are all by themselves out there. Remember, Oe has the 2 daughters, and he has his wife Toyo. And there's a 3rd family. I might as well get into them now. And that was the Haradas, and they came about 1921. Mr. Harada was a officer in the Japanese Army during the Russo-Japan War, and he had a wife. We don't know her name, and he had 5 children. Now, if you start doing the math here, remember what I told you? About 10? Remember that number 10? So he has 5 children, except for this time he's got just the reverse. He's got 4 girls, and he's got 1 boy. And all of them have got English names too. Now, while all these kids are growing up out there on Aurora, the Haradas were way out. It was the Oe first, the Izaki farm, and then the Hirata farm, all on both sides of Aurora going straight out. And we're talking about all the way to John Rhodes now. All these kids attended Sunday school with St. Paul's Methodist Church. It's right where it is right now. And the school that they attend is right where it is now on Pineapple down there. Pineapple was US 1 at the time. But they all went to St. Paul's Methodist Church. And I looked through a number of these things, you know, that they have, publications and things like that. And you see all these Japanese names mentioned over and over again in there. They all attended there. And I think that when I get into this next phase of this, we know what happened with Murakami. The people of Eau Gallie stepped up. And you know, how many times does that happen? Usually they run for cover. So you've got 14 kids out there now. And they're all heading toward Eau Gallie School. So, but I think it's the fact that they went to this church where everybody in Eau Gallie went. And they mingled with the kids there, the locals, and you know, got to know them, fished with them. The Izakis were big fishermen because they, other than that, they had nothing to eat but what they were growing out there. And just, you know, became acquainted with everybody. And so, remember the 10 students stuff, because it never comes back. They're all there. But anyway, when I talked to Charlie, he's real proud of this. This was his dad's Model T truck. Before that, Kusu did the pedal route. He took the vegetables. All the boys worked at the farm except for when they had something they had to do with school, or on Sundays. They didn't work on the farm on Sundays. They went to church. They went to Sunday school. And I can just imagine all of them sitting in the back of that truck coming down Aurora to Sunday school, you know, all the townspeople down there going, here they come.
Was Aurora paved in the 20s?
The only thing I saw, I don't think so, but it was a good hard road. That's what they said. It was a good hard road out there. So if you want to go visit the farm, you know, don't have to worry about digging yourself out after you get about 2 miles out there. So that's all I heard. Now, I don't know if it was shell rock or what. It was a good hard road. So there was a lot of things about these Japanese farms that sort of caught my interest. But anyway, I think in the back here, I'm not sure, you know, we tried to figure it out. It may say Ozaki Farms on that sign right there. But before they got the truck, the Model T, the Kusu, who did the pedal route, took the vegetables by horse cart. He had a horse. They had a horse and a mule on the farm. And he took that and went down. There was a bridge over the Elbow Creek at that time, the Eau Gallie River, and they could get across. And he went down. He did, there was an A&P. There was a Piggly Wiggly. And he went down on the Front Street Pier, where he sold vegetables to Melbourne Beach residents that came across on the ferry boats, the sailboats or whatever, and I think there was a bridge there at the time. So he had a regular stop where he knew he was going to be able to sell some vegetables. So in the meantime, Fuji's back on the farm digging away, you know, and the boys are there unless they've got to go to school. So anyway, there's a number of people here. We got 2 girls right there in the truck, don't know who they are. They're eating something, what somebody suggested, maybe sugar cane, I don't know. 2 more here. There's a lady here with a young kid in there. And obviously this is the people's car, and the guy that's taking the photo must be the guy that's driving that. And this is one of the 2 Ozakis. I would, if I had to guess, Fuji. I don't know. Here's Aurora out here. Croton, you know where we are now. Here's where Oe's house was. Here's where the Fishy's bar is. Oe's fields span right here. The Ozakis, you know, put their money back into their land a lot more. I did a public records request from the county, and I got their land deed. Couldn't make heads or tails out of it, but they kept buying land as they went. Every 2 years, they would purchase more land. And so they had the bigger farms down here. They had 2 houses here. The descriptions of the houses were just wooden houses with a wood stove and kerosene lamps. They slept, from what I understand, now remember we've got, what, 8 people out there? 3 to a bed. They had 2 bedrooms in each one of those 2 houses, and 3 to a bed is what they slept in. The boys learned to cook. They learned to wash their own clothes. Fuji gave them their haircuts. When you see a picture of them, we're going to get a picture in a minute, you'll see it. You know, this is not styled haircut here. So they got their hair cut the way Fuji said they were gonna. I think those, if you go out there, you'll see right here that trench that I was talking about, ditch, the Hopkins ditch, that was gonna be the channel between Lake Washington and the Indian River that never materialized. But you know, by this time, what's his name? William, with the guy, the landowner, Gleason, he was dead. So that whole idea went. He didn't have to fulfill his obligation about trenching. There's Harada's barn. That stood for a long time out there, but it's gone now. Harada had money too, but remember, he was an Army officer. I put this in there because I did a lot of microfilm looking on the Melbourne Times and a bunch of other little local publications and stuff like that. The ones earlier were mostly the Florida Star that talked about the school board meetings, because that was up in Titusville, I believe. But they just call it Jap Farm. There it is right there. If anybody wants to go, you just go to the Jap Farm out there. The model land company from Flagler's group, they didn't just cater to Japanese. There's a town, I think it's in St. Lucie County, it's called White City. And that was Danish people that came in as a colony too. And Hallandale was a Danish colony. And I've been told of other ones that were around. So the Japanese just happen to, people tend to want to stay with, who they, feel most comfortable with. But one of the things about it was, there was a lot of bad press about farming in Florida. It was undoable, and that's why they thought, we'll bring these Japanese guys because they're really good farmers and they're going to really show us how to do it. So they made sure they stayed in the news, And so, an eye-opener, this is in the paper, who think that Florida lands will not produce the very best crop of vegetables can be found now by all in doubt by making a visit to the Japanese vegetable plantation now. They've come up in the world about 2.5 miles west of the city, and that's what they're talking about.
There's the good hard road.
Yep, there's a good hard road. Yep, that's how I know it was good and hard.